I want to tell you about an experience I had when I was operated on at the IMSS clinic in Puebla. The clinic is called San José. My wife and I arrived in the afternoon and the next day I would be operated on, so we had to spend the night there. In the early morning, while we were sleeping, I heard someone enter, but the strange thing was that the person was wearing high heels. It seemed odd to me because nurses are usually told not to wear heels because of the noise they make, so they don't wake patients. I heard her come toward me and then she pulled back the curtain around my bed. It was a woman and she spoke to me. She said she had my medication. It was a pill that would make me perfectly calm so that when they took me to the operating room my blood pressure would be fine and there would be no complications. I said, all right, miss, of course. She gave me the pill, a glass of water, and I took it. I even touched her hand. I said, thank you very much. She replied, don't worry, your operation will go very well, you won't have any complications. You'll come out fine, perfectly fine, be sure of that. I thanked her, but I was puzzled that she was wearing heels. I woke my wife because she hadn't noticed, she was asleep. I told her, look, pay attention to that nurse because it seemed strange that she came to give me medication. My wife went out, you could still hear the heels in the hallway. She saw the nurse walking and in a moment she disappeared. Imagine the shock. She came back frightened and said, I saw her, I saw how she disappeared. I got very nervous and wondered what they had given me, some medicine that might harm me, and I had taken it trusting them. I told my wife to ask the head nurse if she had ordered that medication. She went and asked, but the head nurse said no, nothing was ordered and that my pill schedule wasn't until 6 in the morning. The head nurse came to see me and asked what color uniform the nurse was wearing. I said it was all white with a blue blouse and that she had heels. The head nurse said that was impossible because everyone there wears green and white and no nurse dresses like that. She said she would ask the other nurses if any of them had been to see me, but none had. No one had been with me all night. Then she called my wife into the hallway in a way meant so I wouldn't notice, but I still heard what she said. What happened was that the famous La Planchada came to visit your husband. My wife was terrified and so was I. But the incident didn't end there. A little later we tried to sleep again and soon after I heard the heels approaching my bed once more. Suddenly someone pulled the curtain back, but the most alarming thing was that there was no one there. I told my wife, look, there's the nurse, but she said no, there was no one. She, like me, could hear the heels receding down the hallway. It was twice as frightening now that we knew what it was, since the head nurse had explained. Luckily it ended there and in the morning I indeed had no complications. But that wasn't the only thing that happened to me in that clinic. I was given bed number 450. 6 months later I had another operation scheduled, this time on the other eye. We arrived at night and were given the same bed, number 450. In the early morning we were sleeping but I was anxious, afraid that the nurse would return. We were asleep when I suddenly felt the bed being lifted off the floor. I estimate at least 20 centimeters, and it was being slammed down against the floor, quickly. I woke with a shock you can't imagine. My wife woke up too and I said, it's shaking too hard, maybe it's an earthquake. Let's see if the clinic doesn't collapse. We watched and, curiously, that was the only bed that jumped. The other patients in the same ward were sleeping with their relatives and nobody woke up even though the noise was so loud. It was a huge scare, and that time I think it wasn't La Planchada, I think it was something else. My father was a very skeptical man about anything paranormal. Still, when he was admitted to the hospital he began to see certain apparitions in the corner of his room. He was admitted with symptoms of pneumonia and signs of a heart attack. I visited the morning after he was transferred to a larger, more suitable hospital about an hour from my house. He was stable. The next 2 days passed without problems. But one morning my aunt told me he had another heart attack but that he was okay for the moment. This kind of thing happened from time to time, He would stabilize and then his vital signs would fall again. This continued over about 15 days. Around day 11 the whole family decided to go see him in case something happened, since he wasn't exactly healthy. We visited, talked a while, then went to the cafeteria to eat. There my mother told us something was happening to my father. On the way back to the room she said he periodically asked about the person in the corner, and each time my mother told him there was no one there. But he kept pointing to the corner of the room and insisting that someone was standing there looking at him. All the religious people in the family believed they were angels trying to protect him. I, on the other hand, thought it was something more sinister given his condition, since being sent to that ward meant you had few or no chances of surviving. After eating we returned to the room. I remember sitting in a chair next to his bed cursing quietly at whatever was in his room and telling it to leave him alone. I will never forget what happened next. Everyone was talking around the bed and suddenly I felt a cold draft behind me. A few seconds after feeling it, my father looked at me and pointed. But I noticed he wasn't looking directly at me. It was as if he was looking over my shoulder or behind me where there was no one. He seemed to be trying to say something but didn't have the strength to express it. He kept looking until I left the room. A few days later he passed away. I was there when it happened. He behaved as he had during the other attacks, but what struck me most was that his death certificate didn't mention another heart attack. So I really don't know what definitively caused his death. Maybe it was his illness, or maybe it was the things he was seeing.